We've got some staff seats back. If we can have everybody take their seats, the event is about to begin. If we can please have everybody take their seats, the event is about to begin. If we can have everybody grab their seats, the event is about to begin. If we can please have everybody grab their seats, the event is about to begin.
I'm muy ilusionada. Well, that's how I felt as well. So really thank you for the hospitality. Nice to see you.
Gavin. Good to see you. So yes, dude.
If we can please have everybody take a seat, the event is about to begin.
There was set up. Yeah. No, it's two of us. I'm just. He said. Yeah. So it's live. Well, it'd be nice to know if we need to engage it or.
So was the meeting productive? Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I look forward to it. Go for a picture. There we go.
I'm the camera person.
Hello, Karen.
There we go. Perfect.
Nice to see you.
Good, good.
Long time.
Yeah. You and Rayhan and Senator guys, y'all are doing something right. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I'm gonna do one page. We've multiplied that a millionfold now. We are now doing $2 billion in cash-based transfers, over $1 billion of it went up.
If everyone can please take their seats, we are about to begin. If everybody can please take their seats, we are about to begin.
I need a teleprompter to be there.
Well, but what are they going to do? Just turn it
Um,
I kind of like this.
well, you never quite know. It could be really.
Well, I mean, if it's stuck to
It'll
this
be
subject,
newsworthy, one way or the
That
other.
would, that is
the problem is it might get off of its subject. If it stayed on this subject, I'd be willing to try and nice. But there's no way to do it.
You've seen all this stuff.
good. How are you?
Brings that up. All his romance.
Party. And it must have some negative impact. All the
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate it. We need it.
Hi. God bless you.
I'm Kate, hey James.
Honored to be here.
This is a special day.
Appreciate it. That's good to know.
Jody, this is
But I think some of these other ones have not shown up yet. Let me sit here. If not, I will find you definitely a secured seat.
Hi. Oh, Austin.
I hope it was worth it the whole event together.
I received your emails.
Oh, well, good. I hope occasionally you open one.
Big boss talking about this.
Oh, yes.
anymore.
I know who you are. My name is Abba Cohen. I work for Agora Digital America. And we work on many similar things. I've been in Washington for 30 years. That's like a lot of, you know.
I just moved to D.C.
Really?
Yeah, from Southern California. So
Really? And I tell people that I was born in Washington. So they think, it's not possible. Nobody's born in Washington. If you live in Washington, you're from California. You know what I mean? No. Born GW Hospital, grew up in Washington. I didn't know what life was like outside the Beltway, you know. But I just wanted to know, I admire your work. I'm the commission, very important work. It's one of those people that promoted the legislation to create that. Now there's new legislation we hope will pass.
I'd love to get in touch because I told a lot of people one of the hardest things for me leaving Southern California was every 10 days I'd be up in the city with the Wiesenthal guys and
Right.
you know, I read as many Jewish texts as I do Christian texts. I spend as much time with, you know, like Rabbi Adlerstein, the Wiesenthal Center. Gets a question or two a week from me about something, you know, not political stuff. Just Rabbi Cooper gets the political questions.
There you go.
But yeah, it would. You know, I definitely want to connect with the community.
Sure. Anytime, like I said, I'm in Washington. And like I said, there's a lot of institutional memory.
Sure.
You know, a lot of administrations, a lot of congressmen, a lot of issues that, you know, were on the front burner, then went to the back burner, the front burner. And thank God there are a lot of things on the front burner now that for a long time have not been there.
Yeah.
That's great.
We have a window of opportunity, right? And that's
I had to
keep it.
Exactly. I think people who, for political reasons, are not taking advantage of the moment. Like for political reasons, they don't want to work with the administration. You know, I tell people it's irresponsible. You know, there are opportunities here, and we're letting our own peoples down if we're not taking advantage of it. And you know, whenever you got to check at the door, check at the door.
Okay.
Sorry to ask, are you an organization?
No.
No. Who's doing this?
Aguinaldo? Hi. I'll forward it you to the website. Okay?
We're rolling. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the event is about to begin. The event is about to begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, accompanied by Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, the United States Ambassador to the United Nations, Kelly Craft, and United States Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo.
Kelly Craft et le secrétaire d'État des États-Unis, Mike Pompeo.
Good morning,
Bonjour,
everyone.
Mesdames et messieurs.
Across the splendid array of countries and cultures represented here, we come together this morning united by our belief that flourishing societies are sustained by religious freedom. Sadly, this understanding is not universal. Today, all over the world, people of faith face a rising tide of persecution. In just the past years, we have witnessed horrific acts of violence committed against worshipers in mosques, churches, and synagogues. We have watched the arbitrary detention and the mistreatment of religious minorities in countries around the globe. And we have felt the chill of a world that seems increasingly disinterested in defending the rights of all people to exercise of sincerely held religious beliefs. As leaders, a time such as this calls us to demonstrate our commitment to religious liberty, not only in word, but also in deed. Which is why I am so extraordinarily pleased and honored that we are joined here today by President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. Under the leadership Under the leadership of these men, the United States has not only spoken of a renewed commitment to religious liberty, it has demonstrated one. Just 2 months ago, President Trump hosted victims of religious persecution at a historic event at the White House. His administration has vigorously defended religious liberty and the freedom of conscience in the United States. And under his guidance, the State Department has become a watchful defender of religious liberty, especially through the 2019 Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom, the largest freedom event of its kind in the world. We anticipate a fruitful discussion today on how we can expand religious liberty, guarantee the sanctity of houses of worship, and combat religious persecution around the world. And I am so delighted that you've joined us for this timely event. It is really hard for me to think of a better person to introduce to a gathering of the freedom of religion in the world. He knows what religion is, what support it can give to the individual and to whole societies. He's an unpretentious man who not only believes in the power of religion, he lives his religion with respect and even piety. He respects the faith of others. He is that great exemplar, a hardworking family man, born in Indiana, proud of his state, prouder of his country, and a first-class demonstration of President Trump's wisdom in selecting those who serve him closest. It is my pleasure to introduce you to the Vice President, my friend, Mike Pence.
Mr. President, Secretary General Guterres, Ambassador Kraft, Secretary Pompeo, members of the Cabinet, distinguished members of Congress, world leaders, and most especially the courageous men and women who join us here today, who have suffered persecution and violence for simply living out your faith, whether that be Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, and Islam. It is my great honor to be here today with the President of the United States to reaffirm America's commitment to what the people of our nation have always believed, that every person is endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. That Americans have always believed our first freedom is the freedom of religion. Today, President Donald Trump becomes the first American president to convene a meeting here at the United Nations on religious freedom, and it is my great honor to introduce him. There's no better time for a meeting like this on the world stage. As we gather here at the United Nations, more than 80% of the world's population live in nations where religious freedom is threatened or banned. The regime in Iran brutally persecutes Christians, Sunnis, Baha'i, and Jews. In Iraq, Iran-backed militias terrorized Christians and Yazidis who were nearly wiped out by ISIS' recent campaign of genocide. The Communist Party in China has arrested Christian pastors, banned the sale of Bibles, demolished churches, and imprisoned more than 1 million Uyghurs in the Muslim population. In our hemisphere, the regime of Daniel Ortega is virtually waging war on the Catholic Church. In Nicaragua and in Venezuela, the dictator Nicolas Maduro uses anti-hate laws to prosecute clergy, even as his media cronies spread anti-Semitism by trivializing the Holocaust. Communities of faith across the wider world have also faced unspeakable acts of violence in places of worship, shocking the conscience of the world. In October, 11 Jews were murdered in the Tree of Life synagogue massacre in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. In March, a gunman killed 51 Muslims at prayer in 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. And just a month later, suicide bombers murdered more than 300 Christians during Easter services at 3 Christian churches in Sri Lanka. These attacks strike at the heart of everything free peoples hold sacred. And the threats of religious freedom and the attacks on people of faith underscore why President Trump has taken such decisive action since the very first days of our administration to build and promote our nation's proud tradition of advancing religious freedom, and that continues today. At the President's direction, the United States created the Genocide Recovery and Persecution Response Program, and we've provided more than $370 million to aid ethnic minorities and faith communities persecuted by ISIS in Iraq and throughout the region. Earlier this year, at the President's direction, the Secretary of State held the 2nd annual Ministerial to advance religious freedom, inviting more than 1,000 civil society and religious leaders in 100 different nations to the largest event of its kind in the world. And last year, at the inaugural Ministerial, at the President's direction, we established the International Religious Freedom Fund, which already has received nearly $5 million in pledges and given over 435 rapid response grants to those persecuted for their deeply held beliefs. And to date, this effort has helped some 2,000 victims of religious persecution around the world. As the President often says, America is a nation of faith, and we will always stand for the freedom of religion of every person, of every race and every creed, to live, to work, to worship according to the dictates of their conscience. And today, giving evidence of his passion for religious liberty, the President will announce additional steps that the United States will take to protect religious liberty and defend people of faith around the world. This is a very special day, and I always say it is a high honor to introduce this president, but to be here at this historic gathering with leaders around the world standing for our first freedom of religious liberty is among the greatest honors I've ever had. And so let me say, it is my high honor and distinct privilege to introduce to you a tireless champion of the freedom of religion and people of every faith in America and around the world, the 45th President of the United States of America, President Donald Trump.
That's very nice. Thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا.
That's very nice. And I
شكرا
want to
هذا
thank
جميل. أود أن
Mike
أشكر أيضا
today.
مايك
It's a
اليوم.
true honor
هو
Merci,
شرف
to be the
Mike.
first
C'est un
president
véritable
of the
honneur
لي
United
بأن
States
أكون
to
أول
host a
رئيس
meeting
للولايات
of the United
المتحدة
Nations on
Organiser une
religious freedom.
réunion
في
aux
الأمم
Nations Unies sur la
المتحدة.
liberté de religion.
An honor it is.
C'est un véritable honneur.
Long overdue.
Cela fait bien
And I
longtemps
was
que
shocked when I
cela
was given that
aurait dû
statistic
être fait.
that I would be the
Et
first. That's very sad
ça m'a
in
beaucoup
many
choqué
ways.
quand on m'a dit que je serais le
And,
premier. C'est bien triste.
It's great to be with you.
Mais c'est un plaisir d'être ici avec
I
vous
want to thank
aujourd'hui.
Vice
Je souhaite
President
remercier le vice-président
Pence for the outstanding
Monsieur
job he's
Pence
doing.
des
He's
travaux
been
exceptionnels
a
qu'il réalise.
fantastic and valuable representative of
C'est un
our country.
représentant
Likewise,
exceptionnel de notre
Secretary
pays,
Mike
de la même
Pompeo,
manière que le
Ambassador
secrétaire
Kelly
Mike
Craft,
Pompeo,
Secretary
l'ambassadrice Kelly
Ross,
Craft, le secrétaire
Secretary Mnuchin,
Ross, le
Ambassador
secrétaire
Sam
Mnuchin,
Brownback,
l'ambassadeur
all
Sam
for joining us
Brownback.
today.
Merci à
And
tous
we have
d'être
other
ici avec nous
representatives
aujourd'hui.
of
Nous avons d'autres
our cabinet and
représentants
the administration
de
in the
notre
room.
gouvernement. Et,
We've done a lot. The Johnson
nous avons
Amendment
beaucoup
doesn't get spoken about enough, but I'm very proud to say that we've
nous
obliterated the
avons
Johnson
ici
Amendment within our country.
Donc nous avons
So that now
annulé l'amendement
we can
Johnson
listen to the people
dans notre
that
pays.
we
Nous
want to
pouvons
listen
donc
to,
écouter
religious leaders,
ceux
without
qui peuvent,
recrimination
qui
against
souhaitent nous
them.
parler, donc par exemple
It's a very
les
important
dirigeants,
thing, and
les
I
leaders
said that at the
religieux.
beginning,
Et c'est quelque chose
and
d'important, je
I
le
say
dis.
it now. It's something I'm very proud of.
Et je le
We're
redis,
also
c'est quelque
grateful
chose dont
that
je suis
the
très
UN
fière. Nous
Secretary
sommes
General
également
Antonio Guterres could be here
reconnaissants
along
envers,
with
le secrétaire
so
général
many
des
of
Nations Unies, Antonio
his friends
Guterres,
and my friends,
qui
world
est à nos
leaders. I've
côtés,
gotten to know a
ainsi
lot of
que,
them, and I would
des
imagine
amis,
you know
beaucoup
all
de
of them.
dirigeants du monde entier.
I would imagine.
que
If
je
you don't, you're
connais.
not doing your job.
Alors j'imagine que vous les connaissez aussi bien que moi parce que
And
sinon,
also, I
ça
want
veut
to
dire
thank
que vous
my
ne faites pas
daughter
votre
Ivanka
travail.
for being here. She
J'aimerais
worked so
également
hard
remercier
on
ma fille,
all of
Ivanka.
the things that
Elle travaille
are very important to the
d'arrache-pied
people in this room. So thank you,
sur des
Ivanka, for
questions qui
being
sont
here.
très importantes aux yeux des personnes ici présentes.
The United States is founded on the principle that our rights do not come from government, they come from God. This immortal truth is proclaimed in our Declaration of Independence and enshrined in the First Amendment to our Constitution's Bill of Rights. Our founders understood that no right is more fundamental to a peaceful, prosperous, and virtuous society than the right to follow one's religious convictions. Regrettably, the religious freedom enjoyed by American citizens is rare in the world. Approximately 80% of the world's population live in countries where religious liberty is threatened, restricted, or even banned. And when I heard that number, I said, please go back and check it because it can't possibly be correct. And sadly, it was 80%. As we speak, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, Yazidis, and many other people of faith are being jailed, sanctioned, tortured, and even murdered, often at the hands of their own government, simply for expressing their deeply held religious beliefs. So hard to believe. Today, with one clear voice, the United States of America calls upon the nations of the world to end religious persecution.
Aux persécutions religieuses.
to stop the crimes against
les
people of
crimes à
faith,
l'encontre des
release
personnes qui
prisoners
expriment leur
of
foi
conscience,
doivent cesser.
repeal laws
Les prisonniers de
restricting
conscience
freedom of
doivent être
religion and
libérés.
belief,
Et
protect
les lois
the
restreignant
vulnerable,
la liberté de
the
religion
defenseless, and the
doivent
oppressed.
être annulées. Il faut
America
protéger les
stands
personnes
with
vulnérables
believers in
et sans
every
défense
country
et ceux qui sont
who ask
opprimés.
only for
Les
the freedom
États-Unis
to
se
live
tiennent
according
aux
to the
côtés
faith
des croyants
that is within their own hearts.
qui
As
demandent
president,
uniquement de
protecting
vivre
religious freedom is one of my highest
conformément à
priorities
leur
and always has been.
confession. Et la protection
Last year,
de la
our
liberté de
Secretary of
religion
State,
reste une de mes
Mike
priorités
Pompeo,
principales.
hosted
L'an
the
dernier,
first
notre
ever
secrétaire d'État a
Ministerial
organisé la
to
première réunion
advance
ministérielle pour
international religious
l'avancement
freedom.
de la
In this
liberté de
year's
religion dans le
Ministerial,
monde.
Secretary
Cette année, le
Pompeo
secrétaire
announced
Pompeo a
plans
annoncé
to create the International Religious Freedom Alliance,
la création
an alliance
de
of
l'Alliance
like-minded nations
internationale
devoted
pour
to
la liberté de
confronting
religion,
religious
une alliance
persecution
des pays aux
all
affinités
around the world.
communes, qui,
I've appointed a special envoy
lutte
to
contre les
monitor and
persécutions
combat
religieuses de par le monde. J'ai
anti-Semitism.
nommé un envoyé spécial
We're standing
pour faire
up
le
for
suivi,
almost
de
250 million
l'antisémitisme.
Christians around the world who are persecuted for their faith. It is estimated that 11 Christians are killed every day for the following. I mean, just think of this, 11 Christians a day for following the teachings of Christ. Who would even think that's possible in this day and age? Who would think it's possible? With us today is Pastor Andrew Brunson, who was imprisoned in Turkey for a long period of time. Last year, my administration was thrilled to bring him back home after a very short and respectful negotiation with a very strong man, and a man who's become a friend of mine, fortunately, President Erdogan of Turkey. I called the president. I said, he's an innocent man. They've been trying to get Andrew out for a long time, previous administration. I don't think they tried too hard, unfortunately. But I want to thank President Erdogan, and I want to thank you, Pastor, for being here with us today. Where is Andrew? Is he around someplace? Thank you, Andrew. We did a good job with that negotiation, Andrew. You got back. Wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty, but you got back, and we're proud of you. You have a great family. And the love, when Andrew came back, the love from so many people, it was actually, I hadn't seen anything quite like it. So congratulations, and I understand you're doing fantastic work with your family. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew. And I also want to thank Franklin Graham, because he's been so instrumental in everything we're doing. He's done such an incredible job in so many different ways, including floods and hurricanes. And every time I go, I see Franklin there. He's always there before me. I don't know how he gets there before me. I'm going to beat him one day, but he's always at these places of really disaster areas. He's right there with an incredible large staff of volunteers that are just amazing. Thank you very much. Cece, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Paula White, thank you very much. In July, I met with survivors of religious persecution at the White House, and we're honored that many of them could be here today as well. Some of these individuals suffered as a result of state-sponsored persecution, others at the hands of terrorists and criminals. No matter the case, America will always be a voice for victims of religious persecution everywhere. No matter where you go, you have a place in the United States of America. Could I ask those folks to stand up, please? Please stand up.
Je vais vous demander de bien vouloir vous lever si
Thank you. Thank you very much. In recent times, the world has also witnessed devastating acts of violence in sacred places of worship. In 2016, an 85-year-old Catholic priest was viciously killed while celebrating Mass in Normandy, France. In the past year, the United States endured horrifying anti-Semitic attacks against Jewish Americans at synagogues in Pennsylvania and California. In March, Muslims praying with their families were sadistically murdered in New Zealand. On Easter Sunday this year, terrorists bombed Christian churches in Sri Lanka, killing hundreds of faithful worshippers. Who would believe this is even possible? These evil attacks are a wound on all humanity. We must all work together to protect communities of every faith. We're also urging every nation to increase the prosecution and punishment of crimes against religious communities. There can be no greater crime than that. This includes measures to prevent the intentional destruction of religious sites and relics. Today, the Trump administration will dedicate an additional $25 million to protect religious freedom and religious sites and relics. We're also pleased to be joined today by many of the partners from the business community as we announce a very critical initiative. The United States is forming a coalition of U.S. businesses for the protection of religious freedom. This is the first time this has been done. This initiative will encourage the private sector to protect people of all faiths in the workplace. And the private sector has brilliant leadership. That's why some of the people in this room are among the most successful men and women on earth. They know how things get done and they know how to take care of things, and they're with us now for the first time to this extent, first time ever. And we're really honored to have you in the room. Great business leaders, great people of strength. Too often people in positions of power preach diversity while silencing, shunning, or censoring the faithful. True tolerance means respecting the right of all people to express their deeply held religious beliefs. Before I conclude, I want to once again thank all of the survivors in the room for their courage and resilience. You're an inspiration to the world. You remind us that no force on earth is stronger than the faith of religious believers. The United States of America will forever remain at your side and the side of all of those who seek religious freedom. Today, I ask all nations to join us in this urgent moral duty. We ask the governments of the world to honor the eternal right of every person to follow their conscience, live by their faith, and give glory to God. The United States has a vital role in this critical mission. Secretary General Guterres will now share a few words on the UN's efforts to promote religious liberty for all, and he has been a champion of exactly what we're in this room for. So I want to thank everybody for being here. God bless you, God bless the faithful, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, welcome to the United Nations. It's wonderful to see you back with us. And I also welcome the distinguished members of your administration. Excellencies, dear friends, I want to begin by saluting you, Mr. President, for putting a focus on religious freedom, a pressing global issue and one that is also very close to my heart. In 2001, under my initiative as Prime Minister of Portugal, my country enshrined religious freedom into the nation's law with the objective at the time to equalize the benefits that the Catholic Church traditionally had in Portugal and to extend them to all religions in the country. And the measure declared that no one can be privileged or persecuted on account of their religion, and that the state shall not discriminate against any religious community in relation to others. Looking around the world, we tragically know that this is not a reality for millions of people. It is totally unacceptable in the 21st century for people to face discrimination and intimidation for their beliefs. and the persecution
pour
of religious
leur
minorities
les
is
persécutions
utterly
des
intolerable.
minorités religieuses est absolument
The full scope of
intolérable.
their human rights is guaranteed,
La portée totale
and
des droits
states
de
have the
l'homme
obligation to implement policies
doivent être
that
garanties
ensure their identities
et
are
les États
respected
doivent
and that they feel fully
assurer
part
le
of the
respect
society as
des
a whole.
différentes identités et communautés.
Earlier this year, His Holiness Pope Francis, along with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, His Eminence Sheikh Ahmed Al-Tayeb, signed a moving testament for mutual respect.
Ont signé un
It
accord
stated
de
that the
respect
diversity
mutuel.
of religions is willed by
La
the Creator.
diversité des religions
And I quote, "This divine
existe
wisdom
de
is
par
the
notre
source from
Créateur.
which the right of freedom of belief and the freedom to be
La
different
liberté de
derive.
croyance
It breaks my heart to see increasing number of
dérivé de cela, et
individuals
cela me
publicly
brise le cœur
humiliated,
de voir qu'il
harassed,
y a
and
tant de
attacked
personnes qui
simply
sont
because
harcelées et
of their
attaquées
religion or beliefs.
uniquement à cause de leurs
Jews
croyances,
have been
de
murdered
leurs
in
convictions.
synagogues,
Des Juifs
their
ont été
gravestones
tués
defaced
dans
with
des
swastikas.
synagogues.
Muslims
Il y a
gunned
eu
down in
des
mosques,
graffitis de
their religious
swastikas
sites vandalized.
sur leurs tombeaux. Il y a eu
Christians killed at prayer,
chrétiens
their
qui ont été
churches
tués pendant
torched.
leur prière.
And in many
Les
hotspots around the
églises
world,
ont été,
entire communities have been
incendiées,
targeted
des
because of their
communautés
faith,
entières ont été,
including in places
ciblées
where those communities
du
have
fait de leur
existed
foi,
for centuries, if
y
not
compris
millennia.
à des endroits où ces
We must
communautés
do
sont
all
établies
we can
depuis
to avoid
des
religious
centaines d'années.
cleansing of societies. I will always remember when I was
Je me souviendrai
Secretary,
toujours,
High Commissioner for Refugees,
quand j'étais au
and
commissaire
in a
pour les
discussion
réfugiés,
about the Chaldean and the Syrian
nous
communities
parlions
of
des
Iraq,
communautés
Christian communities of Iraq. And
chrétiennes
my good friend
en
Baram
Irak,
Saleh
les
is
Chaldéens
there.
et autres.
And there was, of course, an enormous concern
Et
with
bien
those
sûr, les
communities.
préoccupations
And I
étaient
remember
importantes à
once a
cet
friend
égard.
of mine
Et un ami à
saying,
moi
well, you
m'a
need to
dit,
resettle all of
eh
them
bien, il
to
faut
the Western world.
que tout le monde,
And I
tous
said,
ces
of
gens-là
course,
soient renvoyés
for
vers
people in
l'Occident.
need of protection, resettlement is the
Oui, alors,
measure.
bien entendu,
But
pour
I
ceux qui ont
cannot
besoin de
accept that these
protection, il
communities
faut
that have been there
effectivement
for
les envoyer
millennia
ailleurs.
will
Mais
millennia
ces communautés
disappear
qui sont
from
implantées
their
ici
region.
depuis des milliers d'années
And I told
ne
my
peuvent pas
friends,
être déracinées.
look,
Et j'ai
when
dit à mon
in my
ami,
country, in Portugal,
dans mon
we
pays,
were
au
still
Portugal,
worshipping trees and rivers,
il y avait encore des gens
in Iraq and in the Middle East in general, there were Christian
adoraient
communities
les
discussing
arbres et
theology
d'autres
and discussing whether the
idoles.
Holy Ghost was coming from the Father or from the Father of
Et
the
on a
Son.
parfois aussi des discussions
And so it is clear
sur,
that these communities,
sur
like
la
the Yazidis,
Trinité.
like many others,
Mais les
in
communautés
this
telles que
region
les
as everywhere in the world,
dans cette
are
région ou ailleurs,
a
eh bien,
deeply rooted
ce sont
part
des
of the
communautés
society.
qui sont très
And it
ancrées dans
is
leur
essential
société.
to
Et
preserve
il est essentiel
religious
de
diversity
préserver la
in
diversité
all
religieuse
parts of the
dans
world.
toutes les parties du monde.
We must reject
Nous devons
those who
rejeter
falsely and maliciously
les
invoke
personnes
religion
qui invoquent
to build
la religion de
misconceptions,
manière
to
malicieuse
fuel division, to
pour
spread fear and hatred.
répandre la
And we must be
crainte,
vigilant
la
about
peur.
attempts
Nous
to
devons rester
instrumentalize religion and
vigilants
identity, to
quant à
restrict the full enjoyment of rights by others, and to perpetuate or justify
de l'identité
inequalities.
religieuse.
There is
pour
richness and
justifier
strength
les
in
inégalités.
diversity. It's never a threat.
La diversité est une force, ce
Profiting
n'est
from
pas
that
une menace.
diversity requires a strong investment in
Et cela
social cohesion
nécessite
policies.
un grand
And we have
investissement
much wisdom to guide
dans les
us
politiques
on our way.
de cohésion sociale. Et nous
All
avons beaucoup
major
à faire dans ce
religions
domaine.
espouse
Toutes les
mutual
grandes
respect
religions
and peaceful coexistence in a spirit of shared
la
humanity.
coexistence
And our shared
pacifique.
foundational text,
Et
the Universal
nos
Declaration of
textes
Human Rights,
fondateurs,
affirms everyone's right to
comme
freedom
la
of thought,
Déclaration universelle des droits de
conscience,
l'homme,
and religion.
assure cette
Simply
liberté
put,
à tout un chacun.
the best way to promote international
Simplement
religious
dit,
freedom
pour pouvoir
is by
promouvoir la
uniting our
liberté de
voices
religion au
for
niveau
good,
international.
countering messages of hate
faut
with
lutter
messages
contre
of
les
peace,
messages
embracing
de haine
diversity
par
and
des
protecting
messages de
human
paix,
rights
et il faut
everywhere.
protéger les droits de l'homme et
Mr.
accepter la
President,
diversité.
Excellencies,
Monsieur
dear
le Président,
friends,
chers amis,
the United
mesdames et
Nations
messieurs,
is stepping up action
les États-Unis
through two new initiatives
vont
that
faire
I've launched in
davantage
recent
avec
weeks.
deux initiatives
First,
qui ont été
through a
lancées
strategy on
récemment.
hate
D'abord,
speech to coordinate
une
efforts across the UN
stratégie
system,
contre le
addressing the root
discours de haine
causes and
qui va
making our
s'attaquer
response
aux
more
causes
effective
profondes
against
et
hate
faire en
speech.
sorte que notre intervention soit
Second,
plus
an
efficace.
action plan for the UN
Deuxièmement,
to
un
be
plan
fully
d'action de
engaged
l'ONU
in efforts to support, to safeguard religious
pour la
sites
protection
and
des
ensure
lieux de
the safety
culte
of houses of
et
worship.
pour l'assurance
Holy sites should be
de la
places of
sûreté
worship,
des
not places
lieux de
of war.
culte.
Taken together, these efforts seek to address some of the most pressing challenges facing our world today. We have a collective responsibility to stamp out anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim hatred, the persecution of Christians and other religious groups, and all forms of racism, xenophobia, discrimination, and incitement to violence. Hatred is a threat to everyone, and so this must be a job for everyone. Mr. President, thank you again for your initiative and leadership and for your invitation. And I also want to thank your understanding during this hectic period. I would like to be able to stay for the whole meeting, but it was for me an enormous pleasure to be here with you today and to join my voice to all those that want to make sure that religious freedom prevails in our world everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Guterres. We will in a moment have the chance to hear from three who have struggled on behalf of the cause of religious freedom. But if we would pause for just one moment as the President and Secretary Guterres depart. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr.
President. Very good start.
Thank you all. I want to thank the many world leaders who are here today. Thank you, Vice President Pence, for your work on this issue. I especially want to thank President Trump for being a champion of people of faith all around the world. The Bible says that whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things, and that's what we are all doing here today. As you've heard, religious freedom is under threat all around the world, and I now want to invite three individuals to tell us about their struggles on behalf of this first freedom, this important and unalienable right. And so I first want to call on Debrina Tomaz, whose father was imprisoned in Iraq for his faith. Debrina, thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. I would also like to thank Mr. President for organizing this important event and allowing me the opportunity to share my story. My name is Debrina Bet Tamraz. I'm an Assyrian from Iran. My family has been a target of continuous harassment by the Iranian authorities for as long as I can remember. Today, my close relatives and friends are unjustly imprisoned or awaiting trials. On 26th of December 2014, security officers raided my family's home during a Christmas celebration, arresting all attendees. The authorities separated men from women, conducting strip searches, seizing all the Bibles, and confiscating all personal items such as cell phones, laptops, and identification documents. My father was imprisoned immediately. They shaved his head to humiliate him, treated him like a terrorist, a criminal. He was kept in solitary confinement for 65 days and was charged with conducting evangelism and illegal house church activities, among other false charges that amounted to acting against national security. Today, my father, Pastor Victor Betamrat, is appealing a 10-year prison sentence. Following his arrest, my brother Ramil and 4 other Christians were arrested at a picnic in Tehran. Today, he is appealing 4 months in prison. Finally, in 2017, my mother, Shamiram Isavi, was arrested and interrogated by the intelligence and national security officers for hours. She was forced to provide information about our church and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. When I was in Iran, I endured similar experiences. I was detained and held in men's detention center without the presence of any female officers. I was forced to provide names of our church leaders and information of their activities. I managed to escape, but I can't forget those I left behind. My family and the innocent people serving harsh sentences for the peaceful practice of their faith. Since 2018, more than 200 Christians have been arrested and are serving harsh sentences. They are either now in prison, serving lengthy prison sentences, or awaiting trials. Christians in Iran are no politicians or activists of some sort, including my family. They're simply believers attending prayer and worship gathering. In addition to Christians, other faiths, including Baha'is, Sunni Muslims, and Sufis, also face discrimination and severe restriction to the freedom of religion. I implore the international community gathered here to hold Iran accountable for its mistreatment of religious freedom and prioritize religious freedom as a foundational human right for all. Every person has a right to live out their faith in safety, peace, and dignity. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary.
Sabrina, thank you. Thank you for that powerful story. And now we'll hear from Rabbi Fayez Al-Gharadi, who fled Yemen because of persecution.
Faiz Al-Gharadi, qui a fui le Yémen du fait de persécution.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
Bonjour tout le monde.
Please accept my sincere thanks for giving me this important opportunity to share my story. If we stay silent, our struggles will be lost. My name is Faiz Al-Gharadi, a Yemeni Jewish rabbi, teacher, and a human rights activist. In Yemen, I held rabbinical and government positions and served as the Director of Education and Chief Leader of Yemeni Jewry for more than 10 years. Yemeni Jewish culture and history, while once flourishing, is facing extinction. Jewish synagogues, houses, and cemeteries have been destroyed and remains taken away. Jewish art, architecture, and melodies have been stripped of their Jewish heritage. Torah scrolls and the first handwritten books were stolen and sold around the world. My community also faced severe restrictions, false suspicions, and extreme insecurity. Although the Yemeni officials tried to help us, however, we were blamed for social and economic ills. The Jewish community in Yemen has been systematically driven out by repressive policies and prosecutions. The rise of Houthi rebels also forced most of the Jewish community into exile and involuntary immigration. In 2007, I was forced to flee Yemen because I advocated against discrimination, abuses, and kidnapping of my religious community. In one province, Jews were given three choices: convert to Islam, leave Yemen, or face genocide. I was one of those who decided to leave. My wife, 4 children, and I left Yemen in 2007. In 2009, we were granted an immigration status to live here in the United States, and for this we are eternally grateful. Today, it is my honor to speak to you as a proud citizen of the United States. For those who gathered here today, there are millions of people around the world in need of same help as my community. Please make the world safer for present and future generations to live and flourish.
pour que les
Together,
générations à venir
we
puissent
can shine light in
vivre
every corner of the world.
et nous
We
pouvons
must work together to
travailler
stop
ensemble
discrimination,
pour
to stop
mettre fin à la
persecution,
discrimination,
and to
mettre
stop
fin
hatred.
aux persécutions et mettre fin
God
à la
bless you.
haine.
God
Que
bless
Dieu
America,
vous bénisse, que Dieu
and He may
bénisse
bless all
les
nations
États-Unis
on earth
et que Dieu
with
permette
peace,
à tous
health,
les pays de
liberty,
vivre en
and
paix,
prosperity.
en liberté
Thank
et
you.
dans la prospérité.
Thank you, Rabbi. And finally, let's hear from Juhur Ilham, whose father is serving a life sentence in China as a prisoner of conscience.
Thank you, Secretary Pompeo. My name is Johar Ilham, and I am Uyghur. I'm grateful to the United States for the opportunity to speak for millions of Uyghurs in Western China who remain silenced. It has become a crime to be Uyghur in China. My father, Ilham Tohti, is a well-known economist and scholar. He never advocated for separatism, but is now serving life in prison because he chose to speak out about the right to believe what you choose to believe, the right to worship the way you want to worship, and the right to think what you want to think. The only thing he was guilty of was publicly calling for peaceful dialogue and reconciliation. The Chinese government targets religion to ensure that people of faith do not answer to any greater power than the Communist Party. In China, authorities have defaced or demolished churches, temples, and mosques throughout the country. Crosses and minarets have been replaced with hammers and sickles. Spiritual images have been removed in favor of photos of authoritarians. The Ten Commandments have been taken down to make room for government propaganda. Children are forbidden from attending religious services. We are witnessing the systematic eradication of ethnic and religious minority identities in China. Beijing believes Islam is a sickness to be treated with an iron fist. Uyghurs are detained for praying to God, fasting during Ramadan, wearing a beard, or simply saying Assalamu alaikum. Every day, millions of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in China are being abused, drugged, and indoctrinated in the government's concentration camps. Outside of these camps, they are monitored and tracked using high-tech surveillance. Chinese officials conduct intrusive homestays looking for signs of religious practice. Beijing claims it is combating extremism. Praying to God is not extremism. Beijing claims it is training unskilled Uyghurs to be productive workers. Medical doctors and university scholars, professors do not need vocational training. Beijing claims it is fighting separatism. Practicing religion and speaking native tongues is not separatism. Chinese authorities believe that religion and people of faith are a threat to peaceful societies. They couldn't be further from the truth. Faith is an antidote to hatred, discrimination, and brutality, because faith breeds love, compassion, and tolerance. America has shown me the true meaning of the universal rights and value enshrined in the UN Charter. These rights are worth fighting for in China and everywhere else in the world. Thank you very much.
Juhur, thank you. Thank you for telling us that powerful story. And to the other survivors persecuted for their beliefs who are in the audience today, we want to recognize your incredible courage as well. As we close here today, I want to focus your attention on what President Trump mentioned earlier. The International Religious Freedom Alliance, the State Department announced in July. It is the most ambitious human rights project launched in a generation. We aim to bring together like-minded countries, faith leaders, civil society groups, and international organizations around the world to promote religious freedom in a more consistent, organized, and powerful way. The foundation of the Alliance is Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which begins, "Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion." So if you're a country that takes human rights seriously, understanding its many benefits for peace, security, and prosperity, please come join us. If you're a country that stands for human dignity and for freedom of conscience, please come join us. And if you're a leader simply moved by the stories you've heard from these brave survivors today, come join us. Turn your sympathy for them into freedom for others. Please reach out to our Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback. He's ready to take your calls on all religious freedom issues. The United Nations is only as strong as its sovereign members determine it will be. Our belief in our principles is only as strong as our confidence to express them.
La force de notre croyance dépend
that you will help be a voice for the voiceless by joining the International Religious Freedom Alliance. May God bless the survivors who are here with us today. May God bless the United States of America. And may God bless the nations who have gathered with us here this morning. Thank you all.